Regarding the Tibetan transmission for the Vimalakirti Sutra today, what was recited yesterday should be sufficient. Therefore, I would like to clarify a few matters here. These are primarily internal affairs for those of us here at Larungar. Those outside the Larungar do not necessarily need to listen. However, there will be exams held after our class ends today. We have also been conducting various exams recently. These include Korean, Japanese, French, and English. Everyone has shown a great deal of enthusiasm. I also tend to be someone who loves what is new and tires of what is old. I was quite curious about these languages at the beginning, but after a while I'm not sure how it will go. Currently, there is not enough time. Therefore, I will just mention these matters briefly here. If others are not interested in listening, that is perfectly fine. The first matter is as follows. This topic is actually relevant to everyone here. Regarding our course on the Vimalakirti Sutra, if no special circumstances arise next week, there should be 2 sessions. After that, we will take a break for roughly 1 to 2 months. We will resume the teaching in August. Next week seems to fall around the 15th and 16th. Following that week, we may have some internal activities scheduled at the Larungar, specifically an internal Vajrasattva Dharma assembly. For those outside the Larungar, it is required that this assembly not be made public. Any information regarding it must not be shared on the internet or elsewhere. In general, we encourage people in all locations to engage in group practice on their own. Consequently, for our Vimalakirti Sutra course during the coming week, if nothing unexpected happens, there may be 2 sessions. After that, the Vimalakirti Sutra sessions will be temporarily suspended. Regarding the schedule for this week, there is a session on the classical filial piety tomorrow. Beyond that, there are no other special arrangements. Since many things have been happening recently, I am not certain if any special circumstances will arise. If not, we will have 2 sessions. One will be on the ornament of the Mahayana Sutras, and on Saturday, we will study the precious garland of the Supreme Path. I will possibly also give a brief teaching at that time, focusing on the topic of vegetarianism. We are considering the 4th month of the Tibetan calendar, the Sagadawa month. During the Sagadawa month, we encourage everyone to participate. Within the study association and among many Buddhists, more than 90% of the members are already vegetarian. However, for the coming month, everyone is encouraged to enthusiastically participate in Vegetarian Month. We also want to promote this initiative in every region. Please join if you are personally interested. This is a very significant period of time. There will be a simple teaching provided. I will not have a great deal of content at that time. It will just be a brief and simple teaching. So for this week, this is roughly the schedule if nothing special comes up. As for the Vimalakirti Sutra, there are still 2 sessions left for the first half of the year. The remaining portion will be addressed gradually when the time is right. As long as our lives can hold out, I intend to keep teaching this sutra regardless of the circumstances. Even if eventually no one is listening except for one person, I will still finish it. But I believe that outcome is unlikely. Especially toward the end, the number of listeners will likely grow. In the middle of a long series, people generally take a break for a while, but as we approach the end, one feels a certain sense of accomplishment. The final day in particular will certainly draw a large audience. So I believe that as long as we work diligently, based on our past experience, we will succeed. Each Dharma teaching we have done, whether it took 100 or 200 sessions, was completed. The Vimalakirti Sutra will follow the same path. With everyone's collective effort, the day of its completion will certainly come. That is my firm belief. Therefore, there is no need to rush. We will take it slowly. That is the first matter I wanted to discuss. Now, for the second matter, I would like to comment on our study of the 5 Great Treatises. Overall, the progress seems to be quite positive. However, I hope that everyone continues to put in effort, especially regarding the annual written assignments related to the 5 Great Treatises. This is a very important task. I have always placed great emphasis on this. For example, if you are currently studying Madhyamaka, when addressing a specific question within that field, you should thoroughly consult various reference materials. Then you should incorporate your own creative insights. By that, I mean your own meaningful analysis. analysis. It is not sufficient to simply patch together a large collection of scriptural citations. I have reviewed several essay collections from the past 2 years. I found them to be very well done. Writing is a very necessary part of our practice here. Regarding the specific treatise you are studying each year, if you engage with it through the process of writing, the improvement in your personal understanding will be immense. The greatest benefit comes from writing, followed by memorization. After that comes the oral examination, and finally, reading the texts on your own. This entire process facilitates the progressive development of your wisdom. This is what I wanted to emphasize today. We have no other industries here, such as manufacturing, agriculture, or commerce. Aside from listening, contemplating, and meditating, there is nothing else. The path of listening, contemplating, and practicing consists of teaching, debate, and composition. Among these three activities, teaching and debate are basically well established here. As for composing treatises, it is necessary for our practitioners to take this task upon themselves. I inquired about this a few days ago, and I was told that progress should be going well. However, sometimes if people are not regularly reminded, they may not fully appreciate the importance of this work. This specifically concerns the essay collections on the 5 Great Treatises at our academy. Regardless of what we do, we must remain diligent. There was a certain magazine in the Qinghai region in the past. When I checked the other day, I saw they had already published over 140 issues. It seems to have reached over 140 issues. They sent me a full set of these magazines a while back. Every year, they continue their publication. It appears that they have now transitioned to a yearly publication cycle. It seems that was not the case in the earlier years. If it had always been once a year, that would mean a history of over a century, which is unlikely. Currently, it seems that the volumes they sent me were from 2016 and 2017. 2 separate volumes were delivered to me. Therefore, when we prepare to publish books or magazines, we should first think through the entire project carefully. The subsequent series and essay collections must be carried on with a great sense of seriousness and dedication. In this process, we will certainly encounter some difficulties. However, looking at the bigger picture, if we look back 10 or 20 years from now, we will find that this editorial work was profoundly meaningful. I also support the initiative of several practitioners here who have offered to compile a collection of my university lectures. I spend a great deal of time traveling to give those talks, regardless of the quality of those speeches, whatever I expressed at that time. If they are recorded now while the material is still current, they may hold some small degree of value. Perhaps they have no lasting significance at all, but even if they lack meaning, they likely will not cause any harm. Therefore, I give my permission for this project. This work relies on gradual accumulation day by day. Through slow and steady effort over time, there will eventually be results. The Academic Affairs Department is also quite attentive to this today. I am also very concerned with the writing of the essay collections on the 5 Great Treatises. I hope the Khenpos and Khenmos in each department will also prioritize this. Khenpos and Khenmos, in the course of your research, some of you seem to have no interest in the area of writing. Apart from teaching and speaking at length, there is no actual output in terms of composition. Others focus solely on meditation and nothing else. You should still give this matter some attention. Please check on the graduate students in each of your classes. See how their studies in Madhyamaka are progressing, how they are doing in Buddhist logic, and how they are faring in Abhidharma. You must care for all of this. This is the second matter I wanted to discuss this evening. Now for the third matter. This is also an internal matter for Larunga, but I would like to address it briefly. Larunga has several construction projects underway, including various projects within the academy grounds. There are quite a few volunteers dedicated to this work. However, if you are truly serving as a volunteer, you must take this matter seriously and act responsibly. Otherwise, it seems that problems arise. When I inspected our main access road a couple of days ago, I was very displeased. Regarding the main road construction from last year, at the time when I went down to the site, I also participated in several meetings related to the project. I remember going down there on the 29th of September. Since then, I am not sure what has happened. Regarding our main road now, one side of the 3.8 kilometer stretch has been completed. However, when I inspected it a couple of days days ago after its completion, it did not meet the required standards at all. The original design specifications required a base layer of stone approximately 20 centimeters thick. On top of that, there should be a cement stabilized layer with 4 to 5% cement. Each layer should be 20 centimeters, totaling 40 centimeters. Then asphalt is to be laid on top of that. There should be one coarse layer and one smooth layer. Both together should measure 9 centimeters. But when we examined the road base underneath, it was clearly inadequate. Even for a non-professional like myself, it is obvious that it is completely substandard. When I questioned all the volunteers involved here, they all claimed it was not their responsibility. Yet there were so many volunteers working on it last year. Everyone was especially enthusiastic at the beginning. In the end, regarding such a long stretch of road, to claim absolute ignorance of the situation is something I find quite extraordinary. Because if you do not maintain careful supervision, many construction teams nowadays engage in the serious practice of cutting corners. This is a fact that everyone is aware of. If that is the case, then after the road is completed, considering that all the vehicles at Larong Gar are large trucks, some weighing 40 or 50 tons, the roads behind our mountains are clearly rated with a weight limit of only 20 tons. Therefore, regarding this road in front, it is completely and utterly substandard. Perhaps some of the volunteers are present here today. You should not be shirking your responsibilities. Who was actually in charge of the work last year? The Khenpo and I were both very displeased when we looked at it recently. Normally, we would not want to address such issues among Vajra companions, but the poor quality was plainly obvious to anyone. Whether or not there is a base stone layer underneath or whether there is any crushed stone at all, no one seems to know. There are absolutely no records kept by anyone involved. What exactly are you doing while managing this project? There is not a single record to be found. Simply standing there looking on like an untrained observer does not count as professional supervision or overseeing the work. There are many issues of this nature occurring. Regarding this year, certain matters of design and the quality of the site supervision are still not being handled with enough seriousness. In principle, since you have chosen to volunteer, whether you serve for 1 year or 2 years, every step of the process should have written records. When we went to inquire the other day, we asked everywhere to find out who the supervisor was. When I visited the site, we had already agreed with them that no work would be done this year and construction would start next year. But as it turned out, over 3 kilometers had already been completed. These kinds of things are happening repeatedly. Some of the volunteers here certainly cannot claim to have no responsibility. You should each examine your own conscience. If you truly cannot fulfill the duties of a volunteer, then you should not take on such a title. Otherwise, others will assume you are watching over the work. If it turns out that you have not been supervising at all, you have wasted a great deal of the resources of the 3 jewels. From the perspective of karma, such negligence is unacceptable. Either you commit to the work, and if you do it earnestly from beginning to end. Whether it is during the day or at night, do it well. Otherwise, do not do it at all. If you choose not to do it, we have nothing to say against that. I hope that, including this year, although the number of volunteers is large, many people who are enthusiastic at the beginning will not gradually drift away until no one knows who is still serving. In the end, no one is supervising the work. People are just wandering around the site aimlessly. That kind of behavior has no meaning. Therefore, I am speaking especially on this today. Normally, this would not need to be mentioned in this setting, but there is no harm in addressing it here. Perhaps many of our volunteers, including those in certain study associations and other Buddhist communities, only hold a title in name only. When problems arise, no one dares to take any responsibility. Everyone just keeps passing the blame. When everyone avoids accountability like this, whether it be a country or an organization, it reflects a completely irresponsible attitude. The same was true when the Soviet Union dissolved. It had a certain connection to these political powers. You should have heard about it yourselves. Recall the political parties between Gorbachev and Yeltsin at that time. We do not need to expand our discussion to such a large scale, but some of our current volunteers consistently lack the courage to take responsibility for their actions. In many different matters, you should be clear about this fact yourselves. I am briefly mentioning these matters today. Regarding many of our volunteers in various locations, some are nominally in positions of of responsibility. They are technically the ones in charge. They are supposedly doing the work here. But in reality, whether it concerns the three jewels or the welfare of sentient beings, they are often negligent. In matters of propagating the Dharma, many are fundamentally failing. We see this within our study associations as well. Whenever we issue a notice from the center, they keep the document completely confidential at the local level, because if they do not wish to execute it, they simply will not pass it down. I must point out certain negative aspects found among some Buddhists today that are unacceptable. They are thoroughly inadequate in their roles. My hope for the future is that you either do not take such a position, or if you do, you must act with the three jewels as your witness. Everything you do should be able to withstand the scrutiny of karma. This work should be completed with a great sense of seriousness. Leaving things unaccounted for halfway through is simply not appropriate or reasonable. All right, this is perhaps enough on that. Regardless of the situation, our volunteers must truly become more serious in the future. Otherwise, seeing such things remain unresolved is very distressing. This applies to all volunteers in various locations now. Some situations are simply not as we imagine them to be. I will say only this much for now. Now let us begin our teaching on the Vimalakirti Sutra. It seems that the issues I just mentioned are being addressed. However, I am not sure how effective that response will be. I remain quite concerned about the outcome. I hope you will all still take this matter seriously. Otherwise, these matters cannot be handled in a perfunctory manner.
연재 전부도는 힘미장 오늘 몸은 전부는 가게 바꾸다른 산토 실물도 돈바 특제 장라기 시험사를.
Now let us discuss the Vimalakirti Sutra. At this point, we are mainly teaching the chapter on skillful means, whether it is in one's own practice, in propagating the Dharma and benefiting beings, or in accomplishing any task in this world. Skillful means are always required for any given matter. If one possesses skillful means, that matter will be accomplished perfectly. For that same matter, if skillful means are absent, it cannot be successfully initiated at the outset. Even if it has been accomplished, the ultimate outcome is not necessarily good. Therefore, each of us, whether in our own practice or in any undertaking, must first possess a wisdom that is adept at observation. After analyzing the situation repeatedly with our own wisdom, we should determine the course of action we are going to take. Once determined, one cannot constantly change one's mind. Remaining firm throughout, we should see the matter through from start to finish. This is the basic rule for a person of wisdom to follow when doing things. Thus, in this teaching of the Vimalakirti Sutra, there is a great deal that Buddhists need to learn. It is not enough to simply learn it. One must apply it to one's own life. Apply it to your own daily practice. It should be applied flexibly and practically rather than being rigidly transplanted. If we simply let it go after studying it, it would be entirely useless. Therefore, this daily study and contemplation serves two main purposes. First, that which is untamed in one's mind stream should become tamed. That which has already been tamed should be kept stable and steady with perseverance. The second purpose is this: the content we study each day belongs entirely to the Mahayana Buddhist tradition. We should try our best during our lifetime to apply it toward benefiting all beings. Even a small effort, even drop by drop, if it is directed toward the benefit of others, then its specific form does not matter. It then becomes a true cause of enlightenment. From a long-term perspective, it is a cause of bodhi. From a temporary perspective, it is meaningful for those around us, for society, and for all sentient beings. This kind of meaningful activity is something that transcends ethnicity and religion. All of us in this world, all beings in this land, require this kind of virtuous conduct. Continuing on with our teaching, yesterday we noted that Vimalakirti the layman traveled everywhere, using various means to benefit sentient beings. This was also discussed earlier yesterday. Indeed, we also rely on skillful means in different settings and among different groups of people to present them with the truths suitable for them, truths that fit their specific circumstances. We share these truths through skillful means. This is also very important, especially for us Buddhists. Sometimes we might share entirely from a position of relative superiority and loftiness. In other cases, one might share from a position of relative humility or from a standing of equality with others. Observe the setting you have chosen. Observe the aspirations and faculties of the beings you encounter. What do they truly need? What are they able to accept? We use this approach to provide them with spiritual nourishment or perhaps with certain physical, mental, or material support. As was mentioned earlier, in reality, human beings nowadays consist of nothing more than a body and a mind. As for the mind, it requires a religion, a form of faith, or a spiritual education to be satisfied. Only then is happiness attained. As for our physical bodies, they depend on tangible material things and wealth to be satisfied. Many people in the world believe that as long as money and material wealth are present, they will achieve happiness. In truth, this kind of thinking is rather naive. When we look at people in many different corners of the world, we see that science is highly developed in some places. Wealth is also enormously abundant there. Yet, has the suffering in their minds been resolved? Not only is it unresolved, it is actually increasing day by day. There are also certain technologies that have developed faster than anywhere else. This technology is extremely high-end, but have the people who enjoy this technology truly attained peace and lasting happiness in their minds? That is not necessarily the case. I observe that many scientists and many high-ranking figures actually experience inner suffering that may exceed that of ordinary people. Perhaps in places where material wealth is less abundant and where technology has not developed so rapidly, the people there might have attained a genuine inner freedom and ultimate happiness that surpasses those in more developed regions. Thus, everyone in the world is actually rushing about day and night in pursuit of joy and happiness. This is true not only for humans, it extends down to the ants and earthworms. All their busyness is the result of every sentient being searching for its own happiness. But who has truly attained it? How many have truly found this lasting happiness? This is something we can clearly observe. Therefore, through this kind of study and practice, we may find what material things can never satisfy. There is an indescribable happiness, an eternal happiness that we can perhaps attain through a very simple method. Since that is the case, it is necessary for us all to study together. We also need to contemplate these truths together. We need wisdom to discern them. Now continuing on with today's text. In entering into government administration, he safeguarded everyone. The layman Vimalakirti entered into certain governing circles. Governing refers to what we now call governmental departments and political circles in various countries. These are the kinds of places he visited, or in places where authority is exercised, including matters related to law and regulation, such as government agencies or institutions involved in law enforcement like courts, procuratorates, and the judiciary. This includes the police, detention centers, and the decisions they make, including law enforcement departments and even prisons and similar locations. Regarding these places, is it necessary for us Buddhists to go there? In reality, we should not think that those in politics or government have nothing to do with us. Some might say, do not contact them, stay away. Some of us do not even want to see them, thinking these matters do not concern us or that they are not our kind of people. But in reality, the layman Vimalakirti did not act this way. He actually engaged with all of them. Looking at various translations, some state that he participated in politics, while others say he joined government management departments. This includes the Japanese and English translations. They are essentially consistent with our Tibetan version. The reality is that he would go to these places. What was his purpose in doing so? It was not to assist them for a salary, nor was it to join them in punishing others. After visiting them, while they were in the process of enforcing the law, he would use that opportunity to help resolve injustices and unfairness. He addressed matters that were unreasonable or lacked transparency, working to resolve them one by one. He did this so that suffering beings could obtain their legal rights, find their equal share of happiness, and enjoy their freedom. These are the things they wish to attain. Therefore, those of us who have studied Mahayana Dharma should also use skillful means at times. Regardless of the country or region we are in, there will be political figures and governments. They exist everywhere and have always existed. Regardless of their nature, whether it is a democratic country or a nation with a different political structure, all have their own administrators. It is important to maintain a peaceful and harmonious relationship with these administrators. This is very necessary. For us as Buddhists, in the process of getting along with them, there is no need to fully merge your identity with theirs. If you did, your identity as a practitioner might no longer be fitting. However, that does not mean you should be completely at odds with them or entirely incompatible. That is also unnecessary. In general, we should maintain a positive relationship. At the same time, we can use their methods combined with our own wisdom to help those in need. So we often strive to maintain good relations with political figures in various regions. This is very important. At the same time, it is necessary to care for those at the marginalized levels of society, such as those in prisons and detention centers. The people in these places need compassion. We Buddhists have been very attentive to this over the past several years, and it has proven to be very meaningful. I hope that some of our lay practitioners and some of our teachers will regularly visit prisons to give Dharma talks. Although they may have committed misdeeds and are already receiving punishment, they are truly in a pitiable state. Their families are especially deserving of compassion. I have visited many prisons myself. Some of the people in prison worry every day that their children have no way to attend school because their family members are being discriminated against by others. In such a situation, when we go to help them, they gradually gain a chance to transform their lives. This is also an expression of bodhisattva conduct. I hope we can also care for the people in these places. Continuing on, the text says, in entering into the lecture halls, he led people by means of the Mahayana. That is to say, the layman Vimalakirti frequently visited places of teaching and debate. In ancient India, there were many different schools that would frequently debate one another. The winner of the debate would be acknowledged as the master. The one who lost had to serve the victor. So, generally speaking, in India, each school believed its own path was the best and most supreme. There were frequent debates between them. Vimalakirti would often attend these settings. After arriving, he would use the unique Mahayana perspective of compassion to gradually proclaim the Dharma before them. As a result, many people were able to enter the Mahayana path. It is the same for us. In modern terms, this might mean holding academic symposiums or participating in international forums. It involves regularly engaging in various types of research and analysis and sharing sessions where everyone contributes their insights. When attending such events, there is a collision and encounter between different ways of thinking. One can learn about different philosophies and their underlying spirit. At the same time, with one's own unique wisdom, there is an opportunity to share with a diverse range of people. Then, gradually among them, one can plant seeds of virtue in some individuals. Some can enter different vehicles of practice, while others can enter the Mahayana. This engagement is very important. Now, some practitioners who are more conservative in their thinking might say, what is the point of attending these things? In our academy, some Khenpos and Khenmos also feel this way. When asked to participate in forums, they are especially resistant. They do not allow anyone from their class to go out. If someone wants to attend a forum, they say, why attend a forum? You should focus on your preliminary practices. Recite your mantras well. Most people can indeed focus on preliminary practices, and that is fine, but it is not necessarily suitable for everyone to only recite the Om Mani Padme Hum every single day. We also have the responsibility to propagate the Dharma and benefit beings. In the future, for each of us, if we all possess a spirit of truly selfless dedication, then we can establish different Dharma centers and monasteries everywhere. When I attended a symposium last year, a Dharma master said to me, you should establish an international Buddhist college here. I wondered if I could really establish an international Buddhist college, but I remarked that the auspicious connection was still very positive. Even if I cannot build one in this lifetime, in the future the world is now so open. You see, even a small 3-story building is often called an international grand hotel. Sometimes when you look at these international hotels or international clubs, you wonder what makes them international. You might not see a single person from another country there. So for certain Buddhist colleges or cultural institutions, it is also acceptable to include international in the name. Within our own Buddhist academy, back in the 1990s, Zhao Puchu provided an inscription. It was Larung International Sutra Study Association. At that time, there was a Korean couple who quarreled every day. In those days, there weren't many international students, but for the sake of the auspicious connection, His Holiness Jigme Phuntsok was very pleased. We agreed that International Sutra Study Association was fine. The then president of the China Buddhist Association, Zhao Puchu, wrote it. That inscription still exists today, International Sutra Study Association. The name International Sutra Study Association is perfectly fine. Of course, this name is a conventional one. If one truly wanted to fulfill all formal international procedures, that would be quite difficult. But at that time, do you remember the Korean family? The two of them were quarreling every day. Yes, a mother and son, and the husband was there too. I wonder who remembers them. They lived over by Sami. Do you remember? You see, all of this, that is how it was. So we need to... Do you remember? You have some impression of it, don't you? I see that for the others, perhaps. Does anyone have any impression of this at all? Yesterday, when she spoke Japanese, it seemed that Japanese and Korean are quite similar. I remember it now. In the future, if we make such aspirations gradually, many things can be accomplished in this way. This includes the goal of drawing people into the Mahayana Dharma, that is the second point. In entering the schools, he inspired the children. He would also frequently enter various schools. In modern terms, this would include kindergartens, primary schools, middle schools, and universities. For young people or children in their formative years, he visited the places and settings where they are guided and enlightened. He would often go to these places to teach and inspire them. This is also a very important task. We have been reflecting on this for a long time. I discussed this with everyone 10 years ago as well. Through the approach of traditional culture, we can help many young people, and especially many young children, to receive an education in traditional culture from a young age. We also achieve this through various means, whether through the World Youth Buddhist Association or other paths, such as the Shueren Society. The Shueren Society is an approach grounded entirely in traditional culture. In this regard, I hope that our study association and other groups will continue to work together with great effort. Currently, our management sometimes tilts toward one extreme. Either everyone rushes to propagate traditional culture and completely abandons listening, contemplation, and meditation, or everyone focuses entirely on listening, contemplation, and meditation, and apart from that, they completely abandon all the various branch activities. Going to any extreme is never a good thing. From a broader perspective, the influence we have had is indeed very positive. For many schools and teachers, we have played a significant role in promoting traditional culture. So I believe that in the future, including the study of traditional culture, life release, and charitable work, regarding all these aspects, the study association may need to define two clear paths, just as we do here at Larung Gar with the 5 treatise classes, where there are also volunteer study groups focused on listening and contemplation. Our overarching principle remains the same. Listening, contemplation, and meditation are unchanging. However, at the same time, we acknowledge that for some people, some individuals may find listening, contemplation, and meditation to be somewhat difficult. Yet when it comes to performing virtuous deeds, they are truly very enthusiastic. They are also exceptionally capable in those roles. If we were to completely abandon these activities, we would face certain difficulties. Many people now, because we have worked on this for so long, and now that it is well established, want to reap what has already been prepared. That is not necessarily a good thing. We still need to make some adjustments going forward. This is one of my suggestions. Of course, this is not easy to implement. It will perhaps slowly mature over time. What I mean to say is that it is now very necessary to provide an education to the younger generation. As the commentary also mentions, when Prince Siddhartha sought knowledge in the past, it was quite exceptional. Some sutras recount that when Prince Siddhartha went to enroll in school upon his arrival, he asked his teacher 64 profound questions. He asked, "Do you know this text? Do you know that text?" In the end, even the teacher did not know them. At that time, 500 children of the Shakya clan accompanied the prince. The teachers were all particularly amazed because even from such a young age, his roots of virtue and wisdom were completely beyond the ordinary. We may not necessarily be able to attract children with such extraordinary roots, but no matter what, if we do not give up, our efforts will be very meaningful. Therefore, our aspiration still possesses great vitality, no matter who it is, as we discussed recently, whether they are elderly, middle-aged, or young. Today we speak of the youngest of all, these little bodhisattvas. In the future, the entire world will belong to them. If at that time they care for nothing except money, that kind of person would be truly frightening. Without even basic integrity, the things they say are unreliable. Nowadays, when we encounter certain construction teams or various other people, sometimes we observe their character. Westerners, for example, place a very high value on integrity. Once a person tells a lie, no matter what happens afterward, the impression they leave is very poor. But among the people we see in many places today, because they did not receive a good education from childhood, every word they speak is deceptive. In such cases, nothing can be done for them. When speaking with them, what was agreed upon today is completely changed by tomorrow. Therefore, perhaps many Dharma masters here who spend every day studying Madhyamaka and Buddhist logic may think that as long as one has reason, one can go anywhere in the world. You might hold this belief, but in reality, it is not like this at all. In this world of ours, people are especially inclined to lie, and they lack integrity. It is such a world. In reality, this is related to the education of kindness and the cultivation of a good heart from childhood. So it is very necessary for us to continue working in this area. I hope that this effort is not just a brief beginning. Some of our Dharma masters and other individuals are very enthusiastic at the start. When putting forward suggestions at meetings, they act as if they could even serve as the President of the United States. Yet after a while, when encountering even a tiny difficulty, they disappear without a trace. Not even a shadow of that person can be seen again. Such things happen. That is not how it should be. At the beginning, you do not need to be that enthusiastic. Even if you have a somewhat different view or a contrarian way of thinking, that is also fine. But gradually, we should be able to say, this person is truly reliable. They are very methodical in their work, being steady and thorough. Dharma practice also requires this kind of person. Completing tasks also requires this kind of person. In this way, whether in propagating the Dharma and benefiting beings or even in our guidance of young children, it becomes completely meaningful. Once we have done the work, we can achieve many results. In entering the brothels, he revealed the transgressions that arise from desire. The text goes on to say, as a great layman, Vimalakirti had his own family, as we discussed yesterday, but he would also often visit brothels, which are rather particular settings in this world. In going there, it was not because he himself had any moral or behavioral corruption. That was not his reason for going. Rather, his primary purpose was to reveal the faults of craving, because in those settings, one could say that craving and desire are very powerful. They are places where such people gather, and upon arriving at these places, he had the means, the opportunity, and the skillful means to help these beings gradually recognize the faults of craving. This is also discussed in the commentary of Master Sengzhao. I am not sure whether we have mentioned it before, but there is the story of the courtesan Miao Jingguang. Miao Jingguang had a body the color of gold. She was especially beautiful and was a very famous courtesan. One day, she was with the son of a merchant. He had spent about 1,000 tiles of gold on her, and they went together to a park. While they were on their way, Manjushri Bodhisattva perceived that the conditions for guiding these beings had already ripened. Then he manifested an even more exquisite form, wearing very beautiful clothing. He appeared before the two of them in this way. The courtesan Miao Jingguang immediately developed craving for him. She abandoned the merchant's son, disregarding the 1,000 taels of gold he had already spent. She came over and began pursuing the emanation of Manjushri Bodhisattva. At that moment she asked, "May I have your robe?" Manjushri Bodhisattva replied, "I can give it to you, but there is a condition." She asked, "What is the condition?" "You must generate bodhicitta." Miao Jingguang asked, "What is bodhicitta?" Manjushri Bodhisattva said, "Your body is bodhicitta." She asked, "Why is my body bodhicitta?" "Because your body is emptiness," he replied, "and bodhicitta is also emptiness. Therefore your body is bodhicitta." When he said this, in fact, Miao Jingguang had previously heard about emptiness while in the presence of Kashyapa Buddha. Upon hearing the term emptiness once again, she immediately attained the forbearance of the unborn. This kind of practice is truly excellent. After she attained the forbearance of the unborn, she wanted to renounce the world with Manjushri Bodhisattva. But Manjushri Bodhisattva would not agree. He said, "You should still go with that handsome fellow." Later, Miao Jingguang returned to the merchant's son. As a result, before they had even left the park, Miao Jingguang passed away. The merchant's son was deeply grieved by her death. While he was holding her corpse, it decayed very quickly and became especially foul-smelling. In the end, it turned into white bones in such a short time. A woman who was originally so beautiful suddenly became something utterly repulsive and then turned into white bones. He developed a profound sense of revulsion toward the body. He saw the faults of desirable appearances. At that moment, the merchant's son also attained the stage of the forbearance of the non-arising. In reality, Manjushri Bodhisattva manifested as a person to guide Miao Jingguang, and Miao Jingguang, the woman who appeared to have died, had not actually died because she was an emanation. She had also come to guide the merchant's son. Later, they apparently went to see the world-honored one. I do not recall the details very clearly, but what I want to emphasize here is that after hearing the Dharma gate of emptiness, for those who have studied and contemplated emptiness in the past, the moment they hear these teachings in this life, their roots of virtue are immediately revived. As described in the Entering the Middle Way, upon hearing of emptiness, tears begin to flow. One experiences signs such as one's hair standing on end. There are other cases as well, as I mentioned recently. This is still very important. 400 stanzas on the Middle Way also teaches that if many of us have doubts about the Dharma, we should rely on the study of emptiness to dispel them. If doubts arise concerning the Buddha's profound teachings, one can rely on signless emptiness to generate firm faith. So what can we do? By studying and contemplating emptiness, we can develop certain faith. I hope everyone can memorize this verse. Some of us feel that many Buddhist concepts of samsara, the concept of karma, and the concept of past and future lives might leave us wondering if they are correct. You can temporarily set those doubts aside, then go study the 6 Madhyamaka treatises and the Prajnaparamita Sutra. After 2 or 3 years of study, you will discover the profound depth of these principles. The Buddha truly possessed great wisdom. If such profound truths can be established, then other matters like past lives and karma are relatively simple by comparison. Approaching it this way is a very effective method. I once attended a symposium in Qinghai. When I spoke in Tibetan, I shared this citation with them. At that time, I also used a citation from the Valid Cognition. This citation from the Valid Cognition is also very famous. It is from Master Dharmakirti's Valid Cognition. Knowing what to adopt and abandon and the means thereof, he is acknowledged as a valid authority, not because he knows all things. Through the 4 Noble Truths, we recognize the Buddha as a valid authority. This is the intended meaning. For instance, consider adoption, abandonment, and the means. Adopting refers to the truth of cessation. Abandoning is the truth of suffering. And the means are the truth of the path and the truth of arising. The meaning refers to the Four Noble Truths of suffering, arising, cessation, and the path. Through the Four Noble Truths, we recognize him as a valid authority, a valid source of knowledge. It is not necessary for him to know every trivial thing. By knowing what exactly? By knowing the Four Noble Truths, his status as a valid authority is established. Other matters, such as the exact number of plants and trees, are not essential. These are not necessarily the requirements for establishing omniscience. This point is also very important. There is another citation from the valid cognition. We will discuss that one another time. Within Tibetan Buddhism, these are the primary grounds for establishing the world-honored one as a valid authority and for establishing the Dharma as a valid source of right knowledge. You may reflect on this repeatedly. So what were we just discussing? We were discussing the story of Miao Jingguang, which follows this logic. What can be seen from this story? Most people today likely think that so-called brothels are extremely impure places. Of course, for many people, as is the case in many countries today, including some Western nations, entering such environments can indeed lead to total moral corruption. This is especially true for high-ranking figures. Some national leaders today face all sorts of criticism because of such conduct. However, if they visit casinos instead, it might not be viewed as quite so serious. But in reality, in some places, these are treated as a kind of trade or a form of social transaction. This was also true in many places in ancient times. They regarded it as a venue intended for individuals of a relatively high social standing. It was even considered to be part of the cultural domain. Such different perspectives do exist. So at times, people's views are tied to their own traditions or the specific systems of each country. There is a certain connection there. But looking at the essence of the matter, the layman Vimalakirti also visited these places. When he visited these places, the various afflictions found there did not stain his mind, nor did they hinder his other enlightened activities. On the contrary, he guided many sentient beings. Among the many accomplished masters of ancient India, throughout their biographies, we find many similar accounts of such deeds. This is one such example. It seems the weather is quickly becoming quite hot. I noticed that no one here is wearing a heavy robe anymore. 一下去了。One cannot wear thick layers in this heat. Well, it looks like we will not finish the teaching today either. We will just proceed slowly. Some people have suggested that I should not keep saying I cannot finish. Since they asked me not to say it, I feel even more inclined to do so. The following passage says, in entering the wine shops, he was able to maintain his good intention. Vimalakirti, the layman, would also frequently visit taverns, places where alcohol was consumed or sold. When he went to these establishments, did he remain in a drunken stupor with those people all day? No, that was not the case at all. His primary purpose was to strengthen their noble resolve. He aimed to help those living in a drunken dream attain clarity, wisdom, and goodness. He wanted to instill this kind of aspiration within them. Therefore, he would go to these places often. Some commentaries mention that many people gathered there, including singing girls and dancers. All sorts of people would congregate together. When a lay practitioner joins such groups, if their heart is truly set on benefiting others, it may be fine. However, for most of our contemporary Buddhists, to say nothing of the monastics, lay practitioners follow the 3 refuges and 5 precepts. Many do not touch even a drop of alcohol. In this regard, staying away is very good, but if one has reached a certain level of realization, then these actions, of course, there is still a certain element involved. There is a potential danger here. Misplaced compassion causes harm, and improper means lead to degeneracy. As we often say regarding these skillful methods, it is hard to tell whether they are sophisticated or merely degenerate. One might believe oneself to be undefiled, but in reality one might truly be stained by afflictions. This is a real possibility. However, truly genuine bodhisattvas may indeed visit these places frequently. We know that Buddhist sutras teach about the many faults of consuming alcohol. There is a text called the Mahasatya Nirgrantha Putra Sutra. This sutra explains that drinking leads to heedlessness and dullness in this life. One forgets all right matters and is rebuked by the wise. Furthermore, a person forgets many correct teachings and faces rebuke from many people. From the perspective of the Vinaya, the Buddha said that one should not consume even a drop of alcohol on a blade of grass. He said, if one drinks, I am not their teacher, and they are not my disciple. This was indeed stated, but for certain accomplished masters, they may actually rely on wine to sharpen their own awareness. This is especially true for some Dzogchen practitioners and yogis. There are indeed such practitioners among them. Phenomena vary, and at times it is difficult to judge. I have read about Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche. Many people claimed his conduct was not in accord with the Dharma. Some followers of the Shravakayana and those who maintained strict discipline found his actions unacceptable. The perspective also has its own validity. From their point of view, the conduct of certain tantric practitioners might seem improper, yet some beings simply cannot be guided by the Shravakayana approach. Those who could not be reached otherwise, including the Western hippies of that era, were often guided through his unconventional methods. On one occasion, Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche said, "Students, if any of you have marijuana, bring it here. We are going to have a party together." Many of them were very excited. Everyone brought some along. They thought they would have a great time with the guru. However, when they arrived and everyone produced the marijuana from their pockets, it was all thrown directly into the fire. He said, "This is our ego clinging. This is our craving." Among the crowd, some were happy while others were quite sad. Some had brought items they were reluctant to use even at home, and seeing that the guru didn't use them, they felt it was a waste. The skillful means of certain gurus, especially when involving unconventional or crazy conduct, can be very difficult for many people to understand. As we discussed in the practice text previously, accomplished masters and swindlers are often easily confused. The text mentioned 10 types of such confusion. Is this person truly an accomplished master, or are they simply someone with eccentric behavior? It is often difficult to distinguish. Regardless of appearances, Vimalakirti, the layman, frequently visited such settings. He was able to bring immense benefit to many beings. When we see these accounts, we feel a deep sense of rejoicing. We also hope that one day, when we are free from all personal clinging, we can enter environments that others might find unusual to help the many beings who are drowning there. If we can provide them with help, that would be a very noble thing. However, there is also a significant danger. If our own mindful awareness is insufficient and we have not yet transcended our own afflictions, we might find ourselves becoming entangled instead. This requires us to use clear discernment. The text then mentions his presence among the elders. Elders in that era were great merchant leaders, similar to what we call business people today. Among these elders, Vimalakirti was highly honored and respected. He taught them the transcendent and supreme Dharma. Merchants often struggle with strong cravings and attachments to wealth and possessions. Their ignorance is also quite profound. Therefore, he taught them these transcendent Dharma gates of liberation. Otherwise, many business people might only seek teachings on human and celestial blessings, especially practices related to wealth deities to benefit their trade. They might seek these things to some degree, but they would not necessarily seek the true path to liberation. Thus, Vimalakirti maintained excellent relations with these merchants. However, his goal in these relationships was not to gain personal wealth through them. Rather, he was there to benefit them through his presence. He was also frequently among lay practitioners. The term lay practitioners used here refers to the treasury keeper among the 7 treasures of a monarch. It refers to those with significant wealth. They were not merchants, but were wealthy through their own past merit. This is what is meant by lay practitioner in this context. They were devoted Buddhists who also possessed great fortune. Such individuals are called lay practitioners. Among the community of lay practitioners, he was deeply respected and honored. These lay practitioners were people with assets in the hundreds of millions or billions. He earned the respect of such people. Wherever Vimalakirti went, he could connect with anyone. In truth, we really need to develop this quality. It seems some only care for their own group while ignoring or disliking everyone else. Such a rigid attitude brings great suffering. We should be able to engage with any group. If you are speaking with a business owner today, you should be able to blend in with them completely. If you need to discuss the current state of the stock market, you can find common ground with those wealthy individuals. When dealing with people in the secular world, including those in the alcohol trade or sex work, you can also find shared topics with them. This is exactly the skillful means of a bodhisattva. As we study the Vimalakirti Sutra, the most important thing is to see if we can become more flexible. We cannot remain so rigid. Of course, at the level of the Pratimoksa vows, to protect one's pure moral conduct, one must maintain a disciplined and serious manner in both walking and speaking. But from the perspective of a Mahayana bodhisattva, each person likely needs to be skillfully adaptable. In different settings, one must speak the appropriate language, act in the right way, and apply various skillful methods. Such a bodhisattva can truly benefit sentient beings. He was able to help them sever their cravings. These lay practitioners and wealthy people often have very strong attachments to their own riches. They might be unwilling to offer anything to the triple gem or give to those in need. So he would teach them about the faults of craving. He encouraged them to practice more generosity and do more good deeds. It is best for those with wealth to make offerings and give to others before they pass away. Otherwise, when we depart this life, that wealth will only be left for others to enjoy. Some people manage to distribute their wealth while they are still alive. Of course, our lay practitioners should not go to extremes. If one does not even set aside enough for basic living expenses and offers everything up at once, they will end up struggling to survive. That is not advisable and is quite unnecessary. One should carefully consider their future needs. After all, the world we live in today is changing very rapidly. Sometimes you may possess a certain amount of wealth, but if you have not planned carefully, it can vanish in a very short time. We see this happening frequently in international affairs. The situation is constantly changing, shifting in an instant. In the past, we called this 10,000 changes in a moment. Now it might be 10 million changes as things move even faster. In such a volatile era, one should truly reflect on this. Next, the text mentions his presence among the kshatriyas. The kshatriya is the royal caste that holds great authority. They are comparable to what we now call government institutions. Among the kshatriyas, he was honored and respected by those of all ranks, receiving the veneration of these kings. To them, he taught the Dharma on patience and forbearance. Because these leaders constantly receive feedback from diverse groups, they frequently encounter differing opinions and criticisms, as well as various forms of resistance. In these moments, great hatred and anger often arise. Therefore, those in authority have an immense need for patience. Otherwise, when faced with opposition from various doctrines, groups, and organizations, if one lacks any sense of patience, one might post on Twitter every single day, complaining that others are terrible or that the situation is very bad. Living in such a state would be very painful. One must practice the perfection of patience. The Ashoka Sutra tells the story of a venerable master named Upagupta. Upagupta served as the royal preceptor to King Ashoka. Upagupta had constructed over 100 monasteries in a certain kingdom, but the local king there was very malicious and constantly created difficulties for him. It became truly impossible for him to continue his work. So, he eventually went to see King Ashoka. King Ashoka was very delighted to see him and asked, "Is there anything you would like me to do for you?" He replied, "I am building a monastery in a certain place, but the king there is too cruel. He creates obstacles for me every day, so please see if there is a solution." King Ashoka became very angry upon hearing this. He said, "I will have him executed immediately." King Ashoka had formerly been a tyrant, though he improved after taking refuge with Upagupta. He insisted, "I will have him killed right away." But Upagupta said, "The very reason I came in person is to address this matter. I did not simply send a message, therefore you must absolutely not kill him. However, you should find a way to mediate this situation." King Ashoka then wrote a personal letter. After writing it, he used his tooth as a seal, perhaps by biting down to leave an impression on it. Once he sent this letter, the matter was effectively resolved. When that malicious king received word from a higher leader, he naturally did not dare to cause trouble anymore. Otherwise, he would have put himself in great danger. This illustrates the point we are making here. People, especially those of high noble status who possess power and authority, will frequently encounter various dissenting opinions from below. In such times, the Dharma gate of patience is essential. Next, he was respected among the brahmanas. He taught them the Dharma of eliminating pride. Because the brahmanas were of high caste and highly learned, they were exceptionally outstanding individuals. People of that time held them in the highest regard. Thus, he taught them the Dharma to help them eliminate their arrogance. Among the ministers, he was also deeply honored. He taught them the Dharma of impartiality and justice. Because they had to manage many affairs concerning the people, these ministers were responsible for executing the king's commands and policies at the local level. So he taught them the Dharma of great impartiality and selflessness. Within the royal palace, he was honored by the palace women. This refers to what we call the inner palace or concubines. Within their community, he was highly respected. He also guided the palace women toward correct conduct. The word for administration should be correctness here. Based on my review of many editions, it means guiding and transforming these palace women. Since women in such settings might face certain afflictions, such as petty jealousy or various forms of improper conduct, he helped to transform and tame these tendencies. Moreover, he taught them the correct and virtuous Dharma. Does this jung for correctness exist in the source? Let me check your text. It seems it does not, right? Yours uses the jung of correctness, does it not? It is from the Taisho Tripitaka edition, correct? Then it is likely the jung for correctness. Otherwise, it would be difficult to explain. Continuing on, he was also honored among the common people. Among the ordinary citizens, he was equally respected and revered. Vimalakirti, the layman, also found ways to help people increase their power of merit. He guided them so that their karmic fortune could grow. In Kumarajva's commentary, there is a revealing account. The story goes like this. There was once a person living in poverty. He saw a wealthy person riding a magnificent horse adorned with various ornaments and looking very impressive. Upon seeing the wealthy man, the poor man said 3 times in a row, "No good, no good, no good." The wealthy person was puzzled and asked, "I am such a wealthy and dignified person. Why do you look at me and say that I am no good?" The poor person replied, "It is not that you are no good. I am the one who is no good." The wealthy man asked why he felt that way. The poor man said, "Because in the past I failed to accumulate merit. With heavy karma, I did not practice well. Now I see that I am inferior to you in every way. Deep down, I feel extremely ashamed of myself." Some of us might also see others driving fine cars, living in grand houses, and possessing a dignified appearance. When we find ourselves inferior to others in these aspects, we might feel in our hearts that we are no good, but in reality we should use this as encouragement to increase our merit and practice virtuous deeds. It is also very important to practice worldly virtuous acts. Among these worldly virtues, one common practice in Tibetan Buddhism is circumambulating stupas. In the biography of Master Atisha, there is a similar account. Once Dromtompa asked Atisha, "Why do you circle the stupa every day instead of meditating?" Master Atisha replied, When you circumambulate a stupa, you accumulate merit through body, speech, and mind simultaneously. But when you sit in meditation, you only gain mental merit. The other two aspects are absent. Thus, circumambulating a stupa is more vital than solitary practice, he continued. In India, some attained accomplishment by circumambulating a city, some achieved it by circling a temple, while others did so by circumambulating a stupa. Some even attained realization by circling an image of Avalokiteshvara, yet you people in Tibetan pay almost no attention to this. He appeared to be somewhat displeased by this neglect. Later, Dromtonpa fully understood the significance. He then made an aspiration to continue circumambulating for the rest of his life. In his later years, even when his health was very poor, he used a support frame or a similar device, perhaps something like a modern tricycle. Every day, he would go to the stupas near his residence and circumambulate them at least 3 times. Therefore, to increase our own merit, we should follow the traditions of Tibetan Buddhism. Practices such as circling a mandala, a stupa, or a monastery are highly valued, as is circumambulating a sacred mountain. These actions build our worldly stores of merit. If we only say we want to accumulate merit, it is hard to define without specific actions. One should engage in virtuous deeds through body, speech, and mind. This is a very important principle. As for the sections that follow concerning his activities in guiding beings in the celestial realms, we will discuss those in the next session. Today's teaching ends on had them generate the power of blessings from the text.
Jupun Solen Droa Droa Shao Bandangara Badma Sodargye Bandangara Badma Sodargye Bandangara Badma Sodargye